the guidance is on that. And we've seen different models around the world where the public sector have supported difficult commercial tenancies. And then something we can step into directly is, of course, the question about how businesses that have got a huge amount of debt and can't grow because of the debt overhang, even if they are successful businesses, how they are going to raise new finance. And just today, we agreed actually we would be considering whether we would be setting up a West Midlands investment fund. It's not going to be able to be huge by national standards, but it will definitely set an example to be supportive of small businesses. We've also tried to make sure that we broaden the types of support there. So, for example, angel investors, private equity networks, trying to grow those, and particularly important for Black-led businesses, the community investment networks like the marvellous Aston Reinvestment Trust. So a number of things we can do to offer genuine help.
Thank you. Liam.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bishop. So as someone who has started a small business with 2 people and a table like this and grown it, I know what it's like to run that roller coaster. I know what it's like to have to go home and explain to your wife that actually you may not be able to make payroll this month, and so there will be no salary coming in. And I know what it's like to have to go from month to month on a credit card every so often until you get the business back on its feet, growing and expanding. So I know what that's like. The 3 things in my experience that are really needed are help with sales, help with tax, and help with grants. Sales, however, is king, because that is what is bringing cash quickly into the business. So what we need to do is an emergency audit of all the public contracts which are currently placed right the way across the West Midlands, to identify where can we redirect those contracts to local businesses, including minority-owned businesses. This is a very common thing in the United States. It's very common in places like Chicago. We should be doing something similar here. We need to be supporting our businesses with exports, and Black-owned businesses with exports in particular. And this is where we need a candid exchange, a candid conversation with the Chambers of Commerce, which currently doesn't collect ethnicity data, as some of you will know, but where I think we can be doing an awful lot more to underpin the Chamber's work in helping support exports, including exports by Black-owned businesses. Second, we need to be continuing the campaign on tax so that those bills don't strike and knock businesses under. That's actually been a collective effort across the West Midlands. The call to action that I helped coordinate with Chambers of Commerce, trade unions, business leaders, this is something that has actually got cross-party support, and it's something that will continue. And then finally, we are going to need an increased number of targeted grants because, frankly, a lot of people won't get through the debt restructuring that is going to be needed. And I suppose that's the final piece of the puzzle. Some regions are now setting up regional banks to help consolidate some of the debt that is out there and is just an impossible burden for people. Restructure it, refinance it, repay it over a longer period of time. It's very similar to debt relief for countries. It's something that we should be considering for companies too, like they are in Bristol and the Southwest. So there's a package of measures that I think will help us get it through.
Thank you. Because of time, I won't come back on that, but I will move on now to the other 2 candidates in terms of the Police and Crime Commission, and then I'll come back to yourselves, Liam and Andy, later on. But Simon and Jay, both of you mentioned very clearly in your presentation about the need for the force to reflect the makeup of its community. And I'm going to ask you, what practical steps would you take, one, to address that from a personnel point of view, and second, from a trust and confidence that the community needs to have within the police service in addressing issues that have been affecting the BAME community over many years? I'll ask you to go first, Jay.
Yes, thank you, Bishop. Look, we've got to start now from the position of the fact that the Commissioner was created to be that bridge between communities and policing. And so if the Commissioner doesn't go out into the communities, does not speak to our communities of various backgrounds, of all our backgrounds, in the city, in the suburbs, BAME, regardless of language, etc., we've got a problem. So it's got to start off first and foremost by having a Commissioner, as I will be, that goes out in the communities and engages, speaks to people, gauges the temperature of their issues, which I've been doing for a very long time now, but I've got the background to be doing from my army background as well, which is quite strong in this field. And as a former journalist, that's all I've been about during my career, has been going out into communities and talking to them and giving people a voice. Because until that happens, we can't start addressing these issues of holding the police force to account. We've got to be absolutely clear about that. So it's got to start first and foremost with greater community engagement and ensuring that all our diverse communities have the opportunity to reach into the Commissioner and air their voice. It is not acceptable that members of our community are not allowed into Lloyd House first and foremost, and that must change. We must have a Commissioner who ensures that no voice is excluded when it comes to the issues that we face when it comes to policing. And secondly, it's got to be about opening up and being candid and honest with our communities as well. When things go wrong, we need that Commissioner to be accessible, to explain things, to take the responses and hold the force to account. If that does not happen, we cannot start to build trust. And for far too long, we've seen far too many things going wrong in Lloyd House and the buck being passed. And that has to absolutely change. Until we do that, when we do that, that is when we're going to start seeing more effective policing. That is when we're going to start seeing trust being developed in police and the police as a force for good. Now, of course, I can talk about a lot of my policies. I mentioned specials earlier, and I'll open it up for later if you like. But it has to be about strong leadership from the top. And as I said earlier, when you've got
20 seconds, Jay.
When you've got someone who looks like you, who talks like you, who understands what we are about in our communities, only then can real change happen.
Thank you. No, all contributors, 2 minutes maximum, please. Simon.
Thank you, Bishop. Yes, we need a police service that is representative of the communities that it serves. I mean, at the moment, it is not. Within the West Midlands Police Service, Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities make up about 30% of the population of the West Midlands. In 2014, 8% of police officers were from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. In 2020, it's 13%. And in relation to the recent recruits, I believe it's 23%. But nevertheless, it's plainly not good enough. And this has been an issue of concern for many decades. In 1981, Scarman said vigorous action was required to deal with this. In 1999, Macpherson echoed his concerns, but most of his targets weren't met. In 2016, the Home Affairs Select Committee described diversity as shameful and pitiful. Our current Labour Police and Crime Commissioner has set a target for West Midlands Police so that of the 2,800 police officers we need to be recruited by 2023, to deliver the 1,200 police uplift, then 1,000 of those will be from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities. And I absolutely commit to that, and I will deliver on it in the event that I get elected. But in terms of promoting trust and confidence, I think this is where we have to make sure that we rebuild community policing in the West Midlands. It's absolutely key. As I say, in my view, community policing is the very foundation stone on which policing has to be built in this country. And if elected as Police and Crime Commissioner, I'm committed to rebuilding it. Secondly, by ensuring that we have the right level of resources dedicated to communication, whether that's 999, 101, live chat, response teams. If that system works well, it improves trust and confidence amongst communities. Thirdly, we'll prioritise community engagement and accountability, and that includes community scrutiny panels around stop and search and use of force, independent advisory groups, the use of body-worn video cameras, and I want to consider area panels to increase community accountability and engagement. And fourthly, Police and Crime Commission now have an enhanced responsibility in relation to complaints. When members of the public feel that matters have not gone well, we have to make sure that complaints are dealt with in an accountable, fair, expeditious and transparent manner. And if there is not accountability, or if the process is opaque, and then it'll undermine that trust and confidence. Finally, I think the establishment of the police cadet scheme and the youth commissioners has been a positive development in relation to the building of trust amongst children and young people, and I'm committed to supporting and expanding that initiative if I'm elected.
Well, thank you very, very much for that. When it came to the issue of complaints, for a moment, it seemed as if no one wanted to hear that, but good to have you back on board with us.
I'm sorry, my phone went off in the middle of, and unfortunately, it interfered with my screen.
Was it the Police and Crime Commissioner?
No,
we'll carry on. We'll go back to Andy and to Liam. This is around the marketing of our region. Marketing our region to increase FDI has always been difficult. It appears, compared to places such as London and Manchester. So how will you make real change to rebalance up the regional disparities, if you see it in that way?
Do you want me to go first again, Derek?
I'll give Liam the opportunity. Thanks for that, Andy.
Okay.
Shall I kick off?
Liam.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
thanks very much. So over the last 16 years, I've had the chance to bang the drum for the West Midlands around the world, and for about the last 12 years, I've been one of the organisers of the Track 2 dialogue with China, and I now chair the Global Parliamentary Network for the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. What that experience has basically taught me is that you've got to have a clear story. You've got to have a clear pitch to the world. And, you know, gold medals, the prizes for coming first, are worth an awful lot more than the prizes for coming second. Last year, I began talking about the potential for us to tell a story to the world about how we were going to lead the green industrial revolution. Everything I've done since then has confirmed in my own mind that we should be trying to become the first city region in the country to go zero carbon in the 2030s. And what has really struck me in the conversations that we've had with industry and investors about that is that people absolutely love it. People love the idea of this great home, this hub, this heart of the industrial revolution becoming the powerhouse of the green industrial revolution for the 21st century. Once upon a time, we were known as the workshop of the world. We could become the green workshop of a greener planet, the place that makes the electric vehicles, the zero carbon railways, the jet zeros of the future. There's now billions of pounds around the world investing in what are called Paris compliant investment funds. And as we've begun to talk to those investors like AXA and Legal & General and others, they just love the gutsiness. They love the ambition of us saying, look, we in the West Midlands, we're sick of being overlooked. We're sick of being treated like a backwater. We're going to be a leader again. So that's, I think, going to be the key to it, Bishop, being able to tell 1.5 billion people during the Commonwealth Games next year that we are back as a leader, and the place that started the Industrial Revolution is now going to lead the zero carbon revolution for this century.
Thank you. Thank you, Liam. Andy.
Yes, thank you very much, Derek. So I hate to tell everybody, but we've not been overlooked in this respect. I accept fully, London leads, of course, but if you look at the data for the last 7 years, we have been the top performing region for inward investment. Facts, indisputable. It's not good enough to be ahead of the rest of the regions. We can do better, but the facts are that we've already done well in this. So how are we going to stretch this? And we're poised to do exactly what the question asks. And of course, the answer is that we are ready to launch our trade, tourism and investment programme on the back of the Commonwealth Games. That's £24 million specifically behind promoting West Midlands business. When we bid for the Commonwealth Games, we said that this was one of the things we wanted to get out of it. And we've done all the legwork, including winning the funding from central government to do this. And it means that this year, not just next year, that Birmingham and the West Midlands business name will be promoted around the world. So, for example, at the big Dubai World Expo this autumn. That has never been done on the scale that this is proposed to do. And I'm very pleased to have personally negotiated with the Treasury the funding to do that. The sectors that we will be promoting are the sectors where we are brilliant. And Liam is right. The green tech sector is one of those sectors that we will be promoting. It is why we have got to win that inward investor to run the gigafactory, the electric battery factory that we've set the site for in Coventry. I've been working towards that for years. It's also why we've got to get behind our digital health sector and why we'll be promoting the opportunities in South Birmingham. And it's why we've got to get behind the whole of the green technology sector that we're seeing decarbonising our industrial muscle in the Black Country. So there are lots of stories for us to tell, and we've set the mechanism to do it. And I'm confident that with that, we can genuinely stretch what is already the top performing region in terms of regional comparisons in the UK. Those are the facts, and that's the plan.
Thank you. To the Police and Crime Commissioners, I've listened to a number of propositions you've put forward as to how you feel you would take policing forward. Policing is with the consent of the people, not the permission, but the consent. How will you cross party political lines to ensure that you police the community without fear or favour? I'll ask you to go first this time, Simon.
Thanks very much, Bishop. I, of course, am always prepared to work with anyone who wants to promote the justice, safety and security of the people, communities and regions of the West Midlands. I will always have an open door in order to ensure that I'm able to do that. Very willing to work with everyone and everyone who's got something to contribute in connection with that. And I will never, in any way, shape or form, close off doors in any way in relation to that, because first and foremost, we have got to work towards ensuring that we're able to rebuild community policing, and we need to tackle violent crime, and we need to tackle violence against women and girls, and we need to tackle the vulnerability and criminal exploitation that our children and young people are suffering. And for that reason, we have to be prepared to work with everyone and everyone around the people and communities of the West Midlands. And I'm absolutely dedicated to doing that. And that is not only cross-party, if necessary, it also means making sure that we work with all public bodies around the West Midlands, whether that's schools, whether that's health trusts, whether it's youth offender services, of course. And we've got to make sure that we have a combined team effort in order to address these big issues, because if we don't work together, we are not going to solve these huge issues. And that's why it's absolutely essential that we do that. It has to be a combined joint agency approach. And that has to obviously embrace communities as well. That's absolutely key. If we're going to have a joint community approach to this, it has to have at its very focus communities. And that means all of the people, communities and regions of the West Midlands, because it's only that way that we're going to solve the big challenges that we have in the West Midlands around those key issues that I've already outlined. And that will be my commitment if elected.
Thank you. Jay.
Thank you, Bishop. I could probably sum up the answer for you in 3 words, and that is serve to lead. We need a police and crime commissioner who will serve to lead. And I use this as someone who, as a British Army officer, is the motto, is what we are ingrained with when we come through Sandhurst. The police and crime commissioner, of course, is an elected position, but it is a position where we need to park the politics, because we're thinking about the safety and security of all our residents, and therefore the party politics cannot get in the way of decisions being made. We need someone who is a strong public servant. And I have that with my 12 years of service, as I mentioned, in the army, but also in my community service that I have delivered here. Now, Liam won't like me saying this, but I have already reached out cross-party, and I won't mention any names, Liam, but there are plenty of people from across the political divide who back my plan, because what they recognize is, in order to make change happen, in order to get crime down, we need a commissioner who is not just willing or able, but whose absolute focus will be on crime and not any of the sort of politics that we've seen over the past 9 years. And by politics, I mean decisions around who gets funding, what gets funding, where money goes, why money goes where it goes. Those are the kinds of decisions, the politically motivated decisions, that we need to see an end of. And when we focus absolutely first and foremost on ensuring that we have stronger policing and a stronger response to policing across our communities, that's when we will be able to see a difference made to all those rising crime issues I mentioned earlier. And to take one of those issues, violent crime, up 140%.
20 seconds, Jay.
It needs a robust approach, but it needs an approach by a commissioner who gets communities and is willing to work with communities. And I'll end there.
Thank you. Moving on because of time, this is to yourself, Andy, and Liam. And Andy, you can answer first on this occasion. This is from the audience. COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the historical entrenched inequalities and disadvantages in the BAME communities. What are you proposing to do to even up opportunities for all? Andy, followed by Liam.
Yes, thank you very much for the question, because it's obviously critically important. I think, as I said in my introduction, the first thing I hope people would say I have done is acknowledge this absolutely honestly. There was a lot of talk when the national report was done that it frankly minced its words. So I was determined then that we would have a 100% honest report. We've had it, called the Health of the Region report. I'm pleased that we commissioned it, because there's actually nowhere now for whoever is mayor in the future, me or indeed Liam or anybody else, we have to turn to the issues revealed in that report. Now, there are 50 commitments that have been driven out. Some the combined authority will deliver, some the NHS will deliver, some other institutions will deliver. The good thing is everybody has committed to their action. So the role of the mayor to convene and bring those actions together is there. Just tell you a couple that the combined authority is committed to. So, for example, we are leading by example in terms of our own HR policies, in terms of the race code. We are committed to launching a Thrive mental health programme, particularly designed to address the mental health issues in the BAME community. What we are also determined to do is provide the economic opportunities for the community, because what the report makes abundantly clear is that the link between health and the economy is acute. So, to give you again two specifics there, in our own education budget, which is all about giving people new opportunities, this year 73% of that budget was focused on BAME communities. That's an active decision that we have taken. And similarly, if you look at a number of our specific retraining programs, whether they be the work with First Class Legacy or whether they be the work with organisations like Black Coda, we are commissioning work specifically to improve the opportunities for members of your community. And I'm fervently supportive of doing that going forward, because if we can raise the economic outputs and raise the health outputs at the same time, we will genuinely address the inequalities that you've described.
Thank you. Over to you, Liam. Just for the two police and crime commissioner candidates, I'd like you to respond to the same question, but from a policing perspective. Liam.
Thanks, Bishop. And again, I mean, just to say, underline my thanks to Councillor Paulette Hamilton and Sandra Samuels for the work that we did together over 3 or 4 months last year, plumbing the bottoms at the bottom of what was basically a perfect storm that hit our Black community. That is why COVID fatalities were so much higher. We found that basic risk assessments of frontline staff were not being done. We found that there was a huge inequality in power structures in the region. That meant that many public services were not trusted, and so people chose to suffer in silence or suffer for too long. We were not using faith institutions to telegraph public health messages. It was just, and worst of all, you know, the more diverse a region in the West Midlands, the deeper the cuts have been to public health budgets. Even today, immunisations, COVID immunisations, are 50% higher in the richest wards than they are in the poorest wards, even though the poorest wards have 4 times more COVID cases, because we are not using community pharmacies in the way that we should to make sure immunisations around the clock and around the corner. So in the report that I've posted in the chat, I mean, there are a slew of recommendations, but, you know, I need to tell it like it is. the truth is, until we begin diversifying the power structures in both the governance of our public health institutions and indeed the management structures, I do not think we're going to make the progress that we need to make on this. And that is my commitment, is to begin changing those power structures for the better. Second thing, we need to be surging public health support into programs for chronic disease. The prevalence of that is much higher in the ethnic minority community than elsewhere. And finally, we need to be working with our faith communities in a much more forensic and strategic way to make sure that they truly are epicenters of good public health practice in the heart of all of our communities. You know, we know that we're a city, we're a place where people often, you know, stick in the places where they live or go to work. Faith institutions are there. We need to be using them much more wisely than we are today, Bishop.
Thank you. Can I invite Jay to respond, followed by Simon, please?
Yeah, in a nutshell, as someone who's seen this from the perspective of a representative of the diverse community, we truly do need greater representation at the top of decision making here in the West Midlands. End of. I can end the answer right there, Derek, to save you some time, but I won't. I will say one other thing or two other things. When this pandemic first kicked off last year and campaigning was put on a halt, I volunteered at my army unit for a number of months on Operation Rescript and worked on an effort which I can't talk about openly, but on an effort which is greatly and vitally important at that time and still is in tackling a lot of the disinformation that we're seeing when it comes to COVID and the pandemic. Secondly, when I got back from my mobilization, I worked as part of my day job on the Talk Together campaign, which is all about bridging links with communities and ensuring that we're coming together. So as someone who's made this journey during this pandemic with these two vital bits of work, I completely get what we need to do. We need a strong police and crime commissioner who's representative of us, who will work with our strong Mayor Andy Street to ensure that we have a voice at the top. And if that does not happen, then we are worse off for it, because we need to ensure that the issues affecting us and the things that we need to have a say and a voice on are heard at every single top level.
Simon.
Thank you. I think the most compelling account I've read about the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities during the pandemic was the report prepared by Baroness Doreen Lawrence. She wrote so powerfully of Black, Asian and minority ethnic people having been overexposed, underprotected, stigmatized and overlooked during the pandemic, and how that had been generations in the making. And the report identifies many inequalities that have contributed to disproportionate impact. Many of those are not necessarily directly within the remit of the Police and Crime Commissioner, but I think there are a number of matters that a Police and Crime Commissioner could address. And firstly, a strategy tackling inequalities will be a key priority in the police and crime plan. And we must have regard to the public sector equality duty and equality impact assessments to shape and inform policy and decision making. And that's to ensure that inequalities are scrutinized and action is identified that needs to be taken to address them. And secondly, if there was a legitimate concern about disproportionality in relation to the imposing of fines for violating lockdown rules, and that's a matter that the Police and Crime Commissioner can hold the Chief Constable to account for. Thirdly, the Angelini report expressed concerns about a lack of appreciation and understanding that can exist in relation to mental health and people from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, and that can lead to fatal consequences. And that's why I will always support the mental health triage system in the West Midlands, so that as far as possible, people suffering with mental ill health receive a healthcare response at the earliest possible opportunity, and not only a police response. And finally, I think the Police and Crime Commissioner can, for example, use the platform they have in order to ensure that role models from Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities, such as community and faith leaders and leaders, representatives from the West Midlands Police, are able to promote trust and confidence in the vaccine, so that as many people as possible from Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities are benefiting from the vaccine, are receiving the vaccine as soon as possible, so as to promote effective public health outcomes.
Thank you. Well, I think we've really had an engaging time this afternoon into the evening. We're going to have to pause here because we gave a commitment until about 6 o'clock, and we very much appreciate the panelists giving of their time, but also the audience giving of their time. So I do not want to take any liberty of that. However, because we have these 4 individuals who are key to our continuing democracy within our region, if you had a wish, one wish that you could make, what would that wish be? I'm going to now go to the police and crime commissioners first, ending with the 2 candidates for mayor. So Simon, what would be your one wish from your perspective that you would wish to give to the people of the West Midlands? No more than 30 seconds, please.
Thank you, Bishop. I've always said that if there was one thing I could do as Police and Crime Commissioner, and I appreciate that to select one thing is an invidious thing to do because there are so many big issues that need to be addressed, but if there was one thing, it would be to reinstate the infrastructure around community policing, because I think, as I've said, it's the foundation stone on which policing is based in this country. It's about policing by consent. It's about proactive, not reactive policing. And I think if we get that right, we get so much else right. And in and of itself, it would be the one factor that would make the biggest difference. And so reinstate the infrastructure around community policing, because it's been dismantled. That was a big mistake. We can put it right on the 6th of May by voting Labour.
Thank you. Jay?
My wish would be to empower our young people to make the right choices so that they can get on and succeed in life. And I say this as someone from Handsworth who had 2 opportunities when I was growing up as a teenager in the inner city areas. One was the Gifted Child Project. I don't know if any of you remember that. I was one of those who at a primary school was sent on a Saturday school to undertake courses and keep out of trouble. And the second opportunity, which came of my own efforts, was the Prince's Trust Millennium Award Scheme, which allowed me to set up a community news publication when I was 16 years old, and that started my career in journalism. You know, these opportunities are few and far between. And sometimes what we need for our young people to keep them out of trouble, such as I did, was just a chance. Every child of ours deserves a chance.
Thank you. Thank you, Jay. Liam?
Well, I was brought up to believe that the best thing that you can give somebody in life is a chance. And right now, the truth is that for too many people in our city and in our region, the postcode where you're born defines your possibilities in life. I believe that that is a basic injustice. It's one of the reasons that drove me into public office 17 years ago. It's why I've put the fight for education at the core of my work in Hodge Hill. We've brought in several £100 million of investment into our schools, and I'm proud to say that though we're one of the poorest communities in our region, last year we sent more young people to university than any other constituency in our region. So I think for the years ahead, the months ahead, the days ahead, actually the key thing that we need, the key wish that I would make, jobs, 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 not just any jobs, but good jobs, jobs that help people find their feet, build a life, build a family, contribute to the community. Ultimately, we're a region, a city of genius. We need to make sure that we recognize the truth that talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. So let's start spreading the opportunity of jobs wide and far.
And last but not least, Andy.
I probably shouldn't say this, but the flippant answer is it's something I can't deliver. Maybe Aston Villa would win the Premier League. That would deliver confidence to this city region rather than anything else. But that's a flippant answer. I think actually the truthful answer, and it's why I came to do this, I was very lucky in life. I had so many opportunities. And the simple one word I would like to suggest is opportunity. The thing that gnaws away at me is that lots of people in this region do not have the same opportunities as I was lucky to have. And that's honestly why I wanted to do this job. I know we've had an enormous setback with the pandemic, but I still genuinely believe that there are incredible opportunities for this region ahead. And I genuinely think we have the capability the political leadership if it can work together, and actually the resourcefulness of our citizens to deliver that actually. So the one word is opportunity.
Well, can I thank you for that, Andy, Liam, Jay and Simon. Your collective contributions, I believe, have enriched our conversation this evening. I wish you all well, and others who are participating in this. What good is to see democracy in action and to have our community and the wider community playing an integral part in all of this. So without no further ado, thank you very, very much, everyone, for your support. If all the panelists were like you, I'll do this anytime. So over to you, Dr. Lindsay, to bring this wonderful evening to a conclusion.
Just very quickly, we really need a part 2. This wasn't enough to give everyone. But you know, I have to say it was being streamed live on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll be loading up this session on our YouTube channel. You know, I'd just like to thank you all for coming. I hope you had an informative evening. Thank you for your attendance. Thank our guests. You know, I know they have such busy schedule. That's why we only have limited time, but we thank you so much and really appreciate that you took the time out to give us a little time this evening. I would like to invite you all to join AGN. The email our email is on your flyers. So please, you know, contact us and, you know, let us build a big AGN, Association of Jamaican Nationals. We serve the whole community. We look forward to seeing you at the next event. Have a blessed evening. Thank you so much, everybody. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beverly, perhaps if yourself, myself, and Bishop Douglas and Cleo stays on after, it would be helpful.
Yeah. Derek, are you there?
Yeah. No.
I think he's in the waiting room.
Derek?
I think he is in the waiting room. Let him back in.
Sorry, Claire, I didn't mention you when I start. I did the thank you up front, and I
Don't worry.
I didn't mention it. I should have written your name up front because I mentioned the names up front. I didn't.
No, don't worry.
I know we had run over time because Andy Street had to go to another. He had another meeting at 6.
Oh.
So that's why I was kind of rushing in the end.
No, it's fine.
So that's why it was. That's why we only had that time because.
Well, Bev and Bishop Deverton and Cleo, I just wanted to say a personal thank you for making it so easy because knowing that the system behind was so sound, you know, it helps to kind of do this. So on a personal note, Bev, as always,
you're going on live on YouTube.
Yeah, you always do what you do with 100%.